Hey there, Shooby Doodlers, how are you doing? I've had a comment today from Luigi Verona who says, a question. You are frequently saying that a story for one's child is not necessarily a story that would work for other children. Could you talk more about it? I'm not planning to write anything like that, but I'm just curious what a writer should pay attention to and what, in your experience, actually works. What Luigi is referring to is how I often say that sometimes people send me a story, say, I've written a story for children, and when they send it to me, and please don't send me yours, I haven't got time to read them all. When I do read it, very often I think this isn't a story for children, this is a story for a child. Very often it's a parent or a grandparent or an uncle or aunt or something like that who something has happened in the family, a story, and it's become a family story, and they thought, I'm going to write that down. And they write it down, and at bedtime they come and tell this story to the child, and they go, oh, that's lovely, mummy, daddy, and they think, oh, great, it's a really good story. And then the next day the child says, oh, tell me that one again, and of course they want to hear it again. The story's all about them. And everybody loves to hear stories about themselves, especially if they're the hero in the story and fantastic, amazing things happen to them. Moving that into a book for all children is another thing altogether. There is no reason why you shouldn't create a book for your child, maybe even a few copies to give to friends and family, maybe even try and sell them, but the chances are you won't sell them because it hasn't got universal appeal. It is written for that particular child, and only the people who are in on the joke or in on the family and the way things work within that family are really going to understand it. I've been doing a little series recently about Lydia, which is my first ever books that I wrote, and showing all the original artwork that I did way back in 1986. And at the time, I wrote these stories about my niece. When I first wrote the stories, they were kind of little family stories about me and my niece and her mum, because when I was an art student I would go and stay with my brother. He'd be off at work and I'd be staying there, and I got to know my nieces very, very well, and I would go and take them out for walks to feed the ducks and all that kind of stuff, and those kind of everyday things became the basis of the stories. Then I started working on them, and it took about 4 years for those stories to turn from these little family stories to keep honing them and honing them and honing them, rewriting them, learning my trade as a children's book author. And I went through about 3 different publishers and editors to get this right. And each time they went, oh, I can't quite work this out, take this to another publisher. And eventually I got it right, and I took it to Oxford University Press, who immediately said, this is exactly what we're after, because I turned these little individual family stories into universal stories that any kind of child could really relate to. It wasn't about that one child, it was about any child, and that is the difference. So if you have written a story and it's based on an incident that happened in the family, then write it down, draw the pictures or take photographs or something like that. And on Kindle these days it's free and easy to create a children's book, and you can put it out there and you can make copies which you can give away or do whatever you want with them, and sort of put them in a sort of great big chest with a pink ribbon round it and leave them there for posterity for your great grandchildren in centuries to come. But please don't expect that this is going to be the next bestseller and that you're going to be the next J.K. Rowling. The chances are it's not going to happen. Every now and then, a story that gets told in a family does become a bestseller. Every now and then. But then when you actually go into the history of what's happened with that story, it has started out as a little incident within the family, and it's been told at bedtime, and it's been told at bedtime. And then the child has probably said, "Oh, you should make a book about that, Daddy or Mummy." And they thought, "Oh, yes, maybe I should." And then they've gone and worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. And you might find that they are writers anyway, and writing is their job, and they know how to construct a story and to step back from that family situation and think, how do I make this a story for everybody? In the end, it's not going to be for everybody, but it's going to be for a much larger group. And if you want to make a living out of it, you need to make your story sort of understandable and appealing to a large enough group that might buy it, that it's going to actually sort of bring some cash in to make you be able to pay the rent at the month, which is what you need to do if you're going to be a professional author. I know a lot of people think, oh, it'd be great to be an author. And it is. It's a real privilege to be an author. And being an author has taken me to all sorts of situations and allowed me to do all sorts of things in my life. And I have been very privileged. But it becomes a job. And do you want to do it as a job? To sit down and write a story and sort of maybe work on creating it into a book is one thing. To want to do it for a living, to become a professional author, means you have to be continuously looking for stories, thinking, how can I turn that around? How do I fit that there? How do I develop this character? Where do I find a character from in the first place? And it's a constant 24-hour-a-day thing going on up here. And then you have to actually sort of write the book. You have to sell it to the publishers or create it yourself, in which case you have to do all the selling to your audience. And as a children's author, there's an awful lot of sort of travelling around and marketing. It is a full-time job if you want to make a living. There are highs and there are lows, like anything else. So what, in your experience, actually works? That is really, really difficult. If you take J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, everybody said, that won't work. And they were wrong. So there is no rhyme or reason to what will become successful. But what works is something that doesn't preach, something that children can really relate to at a language level that they can actually understand and decode. There are all these sort of technical things like that you need to think about, what kind of language you're actually using, what level of language you're using. I think also children like to reach up. So children are always kind of imagining what it's going to be like when you're grown up, or when you're that little bit older. When I'm older, I'm going to be able to do this. And so when you're writing for an age group, just think a little above and write about the age group that is a little bit above, so they're reaching up and aspiring to be that character or to be in that situation. It's also great if you can get rid of the parents and any sort of authority figure, and allow children just to go out and do what they like in a safe environment. If you're going to be published traditionally by a publisher, there are things you're just not going to be able to do and to say. If you're determined to say those things, then be prepared for pushback from publishers. And if you self-publish, be prepared for criticism, because parents don't want to hear those things. Parents don't want their children to read stuff that you might want to sort of force ideas across with. You need to be subtle. And children are not stupid. They are not stupid adults. They are intelligent little people. They know what they like, and they know what they think, and they're learning, and they don't want it thrust down their throats. I see so many people who self-publish, this is a story about, and this will teach children to do. No, it won't. Children will go, yeah, okay, that was nice, and they'll move on to another story. and forget that probably. The message, if you really want to get a message across in a children's book, it has to be so subtle. You mustn't preach. As soon as you get up on a soapbox and start saying, "Now, children, here's the moral of the story," forget it. You've lost them. It has to be in there. You have to let the child feel that they are that character, and to inhabit the character and to start thinking like the character and to feel the emotions of that character. And it's like a rehearsal. It's like a rehearsal for life, reading a book for children. They are trying on these different personas and go, oh, that's what it's like to be Harry Potter. That's what it's like to be Ricky Rocket, one of my characters. That's what it's like to be a cat. That's what it's like to be a shark. And in those animal characters, they're kind of learning about all sorts of different characteristics of people, life, situations. That's what works. I don't think that actually answers the question, because there is no real answer to the question. What works is whatever it is that children like at this particular moment in time. And it's constantly changing, constantly shifting. And when something takes off and becomes really popular, it is usually a surprise to everybody, even to the children themselves, because they just start reading it and say, oh, this is great, and you want to read this, and pass it on to their friends. And that is how a book becomes really, really popular. You can put all the marketing money you like into a book and it's not going to become a classic. Classic books come from word of mouth, from one child saying to another, hey, this is great. And remember also, you're writing for children. So I think that explains it as best as I can at the moment. If you have other questions which come out of this, do put them in the comments box below, and I'll see if I can answer those, and maybe you can kind of tease something out of my head which might explain things even more. So thanks for watching. Make sure you are subscribed to the Shoe Renner Drawing channel and keep coming back for lots more drawing videos, chat videos and stuff like that, week by week. And in the meantime, keep drawing, writing maybe even. And I'll see you next time. You take care now. Bye bye.